First of all, I want to dedicate this week of deeper effort to Swami Kriyananda, who these many, many years has been modeling for us how to live a life totally dedicated to God. I remember many years ago at I believe it was a spiritual renewal week, and there were people coming and going and so forth. To the community, people come for a while. Devotees may come, devotees may go. And he said to us once, you may think you need me to be here and be the teacher, but you need to understand I need you so that I can fulfill my own role. And I thought about that for a while because it seemed strange to me that he would need us, us. But the more I thought of it, it wasn't that he was attached, because over the years, people have come and they've had their contribution to Ananda, or they've participated, and then they go. And so it's like even in Master's Day, Swamiji said it was like a hotel with a revolving door, and people were coming and going. But the process of these teachings being disseminated into the world is what is fulfilling Master's mission. So all of us sitting in this room, those you sitting on there, me standing here, all of this, it doesn't matter who's listening, who's talking, who's absorbing, who's restless, who's not paying attention. This is happening. This vibration of eternal truths is being disseminated, and that's what Swami needed, the opportunity to disseminate these eternal teachings. And whether people got it or not, whether they stuck with the path or not, it really didn't matter, because it was just this beautiful flow, this eternal flow of the truths being given. Now, our topic today, to reiterate, is how to deepen your spiritual life. And one of the gifts that Master has given us, one of his missions, is an interpretation of the great scriptures of the world on a deep mystical level, to show, for one thing, what these things really mean, and on another hand, to show the true unity underneath them all. And I thought it might be interesting to look at these great gifts that Master, and by extension Swamiji, has given us, because he has edited almost all of these great scriptural commentaries. The Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, the essence of the Bhagavad Gita, Revelations of Christ for the Bible, and the Master also gave us commentaries on Patanjali. So I thought, let's just look at different aspects of Master and Swamiji's interpretations to help us understand how we can deepen our spiritual life. First, I want to start off with a theme. I'll read a beautiful quatrain from the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. Lo, some we loved, the loveliest and best, that time and fate of all their vintage pressed, have drunk their cup around our two before, and one by one crept silently to rest. This is, as Master has interpreted the Rubaiyat, it was before his interpretation, it was thought of just a hedonistic poem of indulgence of the senses. But what Master has told us is really, Omar Khayyam was a Sufi. He's from the Muslim tradition. That's the mystic branch of the Muslim religion. And he was a great enlightened sage, a Jivan Mukta. And he was talking about the impermanence of life. So let's start using that as our first theme, to accept that everything we see, everything we know at this point in time will very shortly be just wiped away, blown away as though with a mist. And all the scriptures reflect this. In the Bible, Christ says, put not up your stores of silver and of riches, where rust and moth will get them, and must in our case, where rust and moth will get them, but seek your treasures in the imperishable kingdom of God. That this world, it will all fade away. It will all pass. Again, in the Bhagavad Gita, that same reflection that life is impermanent. Arjuna, at the beginning of the battle, is saying to Krishna, I don't want to fight. I can't kill these family members who, as Master interprets for us, are his own self. And Krishna says to him, these warriors, their bodies may come and go, but the soul can never die. The soul is that which water cannot drown, and sword cannot cut, and fire cannot burn. But everything you see around you, all of this will go, whether by your hand or by the cycles of time. And so to start off, if we want to deepen our spiritual life, to accept the fact that everything we define as ourself, our body, our personality, our health, our wealth, our relationships, our job, all of these will go sooner or later, that life is basically impermanent. There was a beautiful movie, it's actually a trilogy by an Indian director, Sanjat Ray. This was before Bollywood was born, and this was a very, very sensitive and profound trilogy. It was called the Apu trilogy, and the first one, it's the story of a little Indian village boy growing up in rural India. The first one, the movie is about when he's a little boy. The next is when he and his parents go to live in a city, and the third one is his life as an adult. But I remember it was very interesting. I had gone back to, my mother was dying in Kansas City, Missouri, and I had gone back for these last weeks of her life to be with her. And I turned on the television one night, and this movie that I had seen before was on, the story of Apu. Apu's the little boy. And it was so poignant at that time because it starts off and it's in this very simple, harmonious Indian village, and the families are so closely knit, and their neighbors are so loving, and just a simple life integrated with nature. And there's a father and a mother and an older sister and a younger boy, Apu. And it's just an idyllic life. But then, as life is, there's always something that begins to twist it and form it in a different direction. And the father is kind of a scholar, but very impractical, and the family's very poor, and the mother's always, working very hard to have rice to feed the family. And so the father says, I will go off to the city and get a job so we can send money back. And he's gone, and then they don't hear from him for quite a long time. In the meantime, the monsoons start coming, and it's flooding rains, and the older sister, who's just a teenager at the time, she is very, very ill, and she's dying, and the storm is blowing in the window. They have no even covering on their window, just scraps of rag, and the poor mother's trying to shield this ill daughter with her own body, and the little boy is very frightened and watches this, and the father doesn't come back, the sister dies, the monsoons dissolve the house, and there they are, what had been this beautiful life, harmonious and seemingly, it's just going to go on forever. And at the end, there was just nothing, just absolutely nothing. And there I was with my mother in the last days of her life, and I just thought, all the lovely meals that she made for us, and the clothes that she sewed, and the beds that she made, and all those things, it's gone in the blink of an eye. And not to be morbid about this and say, oh, life is tragic. It's not tragic. It's just impermanent. And the movie ends with the father comes home, and he hasn't earned any money, but he comes to his house, it's all gone. He earned a little money, and he bought a beautiful sari for the daughter who has died. And so they look at it, and what can they do? They decide life is impermanent, but they go off, the father, the mother, and the little boy, bravely, courageously, to the city. And that's where the first movie ends, and then the next one begins. The city, to try to build a better life. And so this is also the next step for all of us in deepening our spiritual life. If we accept and don't cling to anything in this world, it doesn't mean that we can't enjoy our friends, that we can't enjoy, I don't know, the new toy that someone gave us. But just understand, don't let your identity be with that, because it can be washed away in the blink of an eye. Just in the depression of the 30s, millionaires jumped off high-rise office buildings because all their wealth was gone. Well, we may be seeing this in the world we live. People who their portfolios may be just washed clean. But the solution, therefore, is, just as that family went off, what can we do? To deepen our spiritual life, we have to look at our own dharma. Look at the duty in front of us without attachment, without thinking, this is mine, I will accomplish this, I will achieve it, but simply righteous duty and dharma. And this leads us to something from the Bhagavad Gita, a beautiful quote. To do one's own duty, even unsuccessfully, is better than to do someone else's duty successfully. It is better to die while trying to accomplish one's own duty than to settle for another's duty, though safer and easier. That course is filled with danger and uncertainty. So that's from the Bhagavad Gita. And it's one of the main themes of that book. Yes, life is impermanent, but we have to do what is righteous in this world nevertheless. And Master explains this in two ways. There's the outer way, finding the work that we've been chosen, that has come to us to do, and to do it with full dedication, but it's also an inner way, our individual path to God. And for each one of us, that's different. And for each one of us, we have to find how Master said we have to learn to individually make love to God. And we have to find that way. For some of us, it will be for deep philosophical understanding and probing to try to find what truth is. For others, it will be through action, and that's their path to God, through serving and through letting God's energy flow through them, and on the different paths of God. But all the religions reflect this too. Remember, they were always trying to trick Christ in the Bible. I loved it. He was so clever. You know, I came from a background of Jews, and you can't help but know a lot of Jewish lawyers. And Jewish lawyers, there they were back in the time of the Bible, the Pharisees. And they were always trying to trick them. And early on, I just looked at all those people and I thought, you think you're wise, but you don't know anything. And I walked away and never looked back. But they were trying to trick Christ. And they were saying, here's a coin. And do you say we should pay our taxes? And Christ took the coin and he says, whose face is on the coin? And they said, Caesar's. He said, give to Caesar what is Caesar's, but give to God what is God's. So he was essentially saying, do your duty in the world. That's what's right. That's what's expected. Pay your taxes, but always do it with the thought of God. And so to find your inner duty, and in this wonderful experience we have of a cooperative community, it's like a little microcosm, isn't it? And we have people that are doctors, and we have people that are dharmic lawyers, and we have people that are cooks and mothers and everything you can imagine. But if we can try to, each one of us, live in alignment with Dharma. This is what God has given me to do. And what it stresses so importantly, don't look to what somebody else is doing. Don't say, oh, that job looks better. Oh, if I had an office in that building, I think I would be a lot happier. Look, if you have no office, I'm looking at my friend Ray now, and I don't think you have an office. If you do, I'm not aware of it. But I think we all appreciate watching him as we drive by, making this community beautiful. This community is his office. I think he has the best office of anybody. And so just whatever we're doing to hold it up, this is the highest and the best. And it says in here, and this is interesting, if we do someone else's duty, even though it seems better or easier or safer, it's fraught with danger and uncertainty. Well, that's probably true. If I probably tried to use a chainsaw, it would be fraught with danger and uncertainty. But why is that true? Because when we're out of alignment with what we should be doing, the ego gets involved. There's a wonderful story from Aesop's Fables where there was a mother frog and her little baby frogs. And one day the little baby frogs were hopping out into the meadow and they saw this giant creature, a bull, in the meadow. And they'd never seen anything like that. And the little babies hopped back to the mother and said, "Oh, Mother, I just saw the biggest creature I've ever seen." And the mother, didn't want to lose her status as the prime importance in the child's life. She said, "Well, how big was it?" And she kind of puffed herself up. "It was this big?" And the little frog said, "Oh no, Mother, much bigger than that." And she puffed her up so bigger. "Was it this big?" And he said, "Oh no, Mother, much bigger than that." And then she puffed herself up so big, and she popped. And that's exactly what happens when we try to do somebody else's dharma. I was reading something that Master said, and he said, I was giving a lecture once, and people came up to me afterwards and said, "You're a very good lecturer. You could go on the lecture circuit, and you can earn enough money to buy a Packard car." Well, I don't know what a Packard car was, but I guess it was something very special. And I said, "No, thank you. I am not interested." But that's what happens. His dharma was something else. But when we look outside of ourselves and say, "That looks important, I'm going to try to be that," we lose the essence of who we are. And all the scriptures tell us that same thing. The joy of just doing what's given to you. I've shared this story before, but it was really one of the most significant spiritual experiences of my life. Many years ago, another woman and I were working on a mailing. It was a Christmas mailing, and these were the days before computers, and it all had to be done pretty much by hand. And there was a 10,000-piece mailing, and we knew it would take both of us for a couple of long days, 3 or 4 days, to get this thing out. And we were working on it, and everything was fine. And then about halfway through, I was thinking about this. This was over when our temple, Hansa, was an office building, and so this took place in Hansa. And then we were about halfway through the project, and Swami Kriyananda pulled up in a car, and he said, "I'm going to Los Angeles to give a lecture, and a group is going, and we're going to do the lecture. We're staying at the home of some friends, and then we're going to go to Disneyland, and we're just going to have a wonderful time, and there's room in the car for one of you." And I looked at this other woman, and I looked at myself. I kind of went, and I thought, of course we both want to go. But I know there's no way on this earth that woman has the strength to pass this up. And I said, "You go." And it wasn't like I was proud of it. It was just more, I knew I could do it, and I knew she couldn't. And it wasn't like any great holiness or anything, but I just knew it's my duty to finish this, and I'll do this. And so she delightfully went off, and it meant that I had to work twice as long and twice as hard to get this project finished. But the beautiful thing was, Master says don't tell your spiritual experiences, but this happened a long time ago, and it's been a long drought since then. No. But that night, I had one of the most blessed dreams of my life. And I'll share this with you because whenever you go into Hansa Temple, think about it. That center beam that upholds the roof, well, I was standing there, and I was in the dream, I was doing a mailing, and then that center beam became the crucifix. And Christ was on that crucifix. And I was somewhere near him, I mean up, because we were looking down, and I heard him say, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." And I knew that girl didn't have the ability to say, "Hey, maybe we should both stay," or whatever. Maybe somebody else can go, not one of us. But that dream, it was because I knew that was my duty. And so I got to stay and finish the mailing, but I also got that blessing. And that girl has long since left Ananda and left this path. But she got to go to Disneyland, but I got to do my Dharma. And it was really one of the deepest lessons I've ever had. Okay. So, if we want to deepen our spiritual life, we need to, just as in that experience where I was aligning myself with my own duty and with the highest within me, we have to more and more try to identify with the highest that is in us. Christ says, "The kingdom of God cometh not with observation, neither shall they say, Lo here or lo there, for behold, the kingdom of God is within you." And later he said, "Be therefore perfect," not good or trying real hard, but perfect, even as your Father who art in heaven is perfect. Cell phone over here. Anyway, so what we're learning from all the scriptures, and the Master interprets this for us, be perfect. It means to realize that the kingdom of God, it's not out there, it's not at Jerusalem, it's not anything that is external to yourself. The perfection that we're seeking is within ourselves. And no matter how many times we fail, no matter how many times we try to meditate and we get off at Sage's Road, remember, we need to identify not with our failures or even with our present state of consciousness, but with the aspirations of our heart, with our own potential. And if we can keep identifying with that, keep saying, that's who I am, not my mistakes, not my failures, but my intentions, and that's where I'm going, we can find God. We need to hold that thought. As long as we're in that flow of identifying with the highest within us, we will reach that state. And all of the scriptures tell us that this life is a joyous adventure. Leave behind you, leave the dead bury their dead, come with me. And the whole of the Bhagavad Gita is an exhortation to fight this battle. And the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam at the end is saying, at the end, when we look at this beautiful life, we'll realize that we are a part of something so much more beautiful, so much vaster. And so if we can see that this life is man's greatest adventure, this life is the adventure of finding who we really are, and it will take all of our strength, all of our mind, all of our heart, all of our soul. It's not something you do on weekends. It's not for armchair devotees. But we can do it, and that's what the scriptures are telling us. And that's why Master someone asked him, is this a new religion? He said, no, it's a new expression, because he's given new expression to these teachings. And we are the receivers of that. If we can be good workmen, good soldiers, the Master came for our liberation. And just to conclude with the very last stanza, this is, the Bhagavad Gita that Swamiji made into poetic rendering. When I was in college, I was taking a class in Eastern literature, and I remember we got a copy of the Bhagavad Gita. We were supposed to read it, and I read it, and I just I felt I had found a long-lost friend. And I've read many, many translations and editions. I don't obviously read Sanskrit. But what Swami has done through Master's interpretation and through his own poetic sensitivity, he's given us the meaning and the beauty of these Gita verses, which are obscure in other cases. And so the very last verse of the Bhagavad Gita of chapter 18 is, "Such is my faith now, wherever the Lord is manifest, and wherever the true devotee, Arjuna, expert wielder of the bow of self-mastery, there I know will be success, victory, and the attainment of all power needed for accomplishment, and the manifestation of all glory and righteousness. Such is my firmest conviction." Hold that thought. Live in the thought that in this lifetime, we, as disciples of a great avatar, can find those beautiful dark eyes that we have been seeking for many, many, many incarnations. God bless you.